All right. Hey, Operation Fresh Start Cruise. I am Carolyn Byers. I'm the Education Director at Madison Audubon. And it's weird doing this on video, but this is our first Conservation Academy lesson. So, Conservation Academy, which you've probably heard, is one of my favorite programs. And we work with Operation Fresh Start Cruise. You guys already spend a ton of time outside doing habitat restoration and really wonderful work, important work in our parks around Madison. And this program we bring in specialists from the environmental field and the conservation field, and we basically get them to tell you about their life path, how they got there, and what their job is and what their job actually looks like. Because some job descriptions sound a lot cooler than they really are. um, but then we give you a pathway to go and get yourself that job if you want it someday. We sort of start you off on that path. And so I'm going to be your first speaker this year. So like I said, I am the education director at Madison Audubon. Madison Audubon is a local chapter of the National Audubon, and basically we're a bird club. We're a club for people who like birds, but we love more than just birds. We have some sanctuaries that we restore habitat for wildlife and for people. You could go out and visit. They're free. They're open to anybody. You don't have to be a member. Goose Pond and Fable Grove. So we do a bunch of habitat work and land restoration, but we also do a lot of education because if people don't know about wildlife, wild habitats, animals, they're not going to care about them. And you have to really care about something in order to protect it. And so I feel that education is a really important part of protecting natural spaces and wildlife. So my job is to teach people. And mostly I work with kids in our community. And our program is really special for a few reasons. There's a lot of environmental education going on in Madison. We are not special for that reason. A lot of people do that. But we do it a little bit differently. So the first thing, and a really important thing, is that all of our programming is free. Free of charge to our partners, to the kids. We write a lot of grant applications. We contact funders to try and get donations to cover the costs of all of this. So the programming is not free. We pay for it other ways, but the people who are receiving it don't have to pay, which is really important because there are a lot of disparities in Madison. There are people who simply cannot afford to send their kids on lots of field trips. And we think nature should be for everyone, not just people who have money to pay for it. So all of our programming is free. That's one really important thing. Because of that, we try to give our programming to kids who wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. So we try to partner with schools and community centers that serve populations that have more than half of their families coming, or half of their kids coming from low-income families. And we also try to target really diverse populations because we know that not all communities approach nature the same way, and we want to make sure everyone has access to nature. And we also bring nature right to the kids. So there's a lot of nature programming where the kids need to travel to nature. So they have to go to the Arboretum, they have to go to the Aldo Leopold Nature Center. We visit schools, we visit community centers, and we take kids on nature walks around their school, around their community center, and we show them that you can watch ants on the sidewalk and you can find crows in the city. You can look at squirrels and chipmunks and all sorts of stuff. There's way more birds than just crows, by the way, in the city. There are so many good birding opportunities in cities. So we show them that all they need to do is step outside to find nature, or even just look out their window. We do also take them on cool field trips to nearby places. So they get to go and visit more wild areas as well. But I think for me, I do love visiting those wild spaces, but like right now I'm looking out my window and I'm seeing bees on the tiny patch of flowers I have outside of my window, and I can hear a hawk screeching, and I can see a seagull flying in the air, and just knowing that nature is right outside my door makes me feel very calm. And I know that it's different depending on where you live in the city, but even when I'm walking in the downtown square, I am able to find some nature. Okay, so the other thing that is important about our programming is that we create long-term partnerships. So a lot of the education programming centered around nature is kind of a one-time thing because they have to travel somewhere. So if kids go to some cool park and have a nature program, that might be the only time they do that. But because we are going to their schools, we can go back every week, and it's not expensive for those kids because we're doing the traveling. So we're able to visit many of our partners every week. And that really helps us build up this long-term relationship that is really powerful, because, you know, it's really easy to roll your eyes and shrug something off if it's just a one-time thing. But if I come back week after week showing you cool things every time, these things I think are cool, usually the kids think they're cool too, then it's harder to ignore. And it's also like, the more you learn about it, the more it becomes a habit and the more you love it. So I think long-term partnerships are really exciting. And we usually see kids who don't really like nature in the beginning. They don't want to sit on the grass. They're worried they're going to see deer in the woods. And, you know, we do see deer sometimes, but deer are also pretty chill animals. So it's okay. It's okay to see that. And so I'm able to take these kids who just are uncomfortable outside and help them become more comfortable and help them find things that they think are cool. And all of a sudden they're running up to me with a snake skin in their hands, wanting to show it to me, or, you know, showing me animal scat, which is poop, and trying to guess who made it. So I love that. I love seeing that transformation happen. And maybe you're all seeing some transformations on your crews too. Maybe there's some people who started out not really loving working in the field, and now they're, even if they don't love it, they're more comfortable, they're more excited about it. I don't know, maybe. So I've been talking a lot about working with kids, and that's because I spend a lot of my time doing that. During a normal year, I see about 300 kids a week because I'm traveling between schools and community centers. And this year we partnered with John Muir Elementary, Lincoln Elementary, Mendota, and Midvale Elementary. So we had four schools. I feel like there was a fifth one in there. Anyways, enough schools to visit every week for sure. We also partnered with Bayview Community Center and Vericourt and Goodman. And we usually partner with Salvation Army, but we weren't able to this year. So we visit all of those kids every week. Some of the community centers is every other week. So that's a lot of kids we see. And we also get a lot of requests for one-time visits at other schools. And we do those too if we have time, because those are fun. So I work a lot with elementary aged kids, some middle school kids, mostly because those are the kids who have time for it in their day. Their teachers have a bit more flexibility with their schedule, and they're able to take the time for something like this. There's not many high school classrooms that have that flexibility, just because there is so much they need to cram into a year. State standards are pretty intense then. I also do programs for families with kids and just adults. I lead a lot of field trips. Some of those are like owl prowls. We go out at night and we look for owls. Maybe I should do an owl call for you. Yeah, I'm gonna do an owl prowl, because you know what? This is a weird way to interact, and I can't see you laughing at me, so it's fine. So this is the call of a great horned owl, which is one that you'll really commonly hear in neighborhoods. So I know of 3 different great horned owl nests in the Madison area right now, and I'm sure there's more. So they say, hoo, 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 and the mnemonic to remember that is, who's awake? Me too. Who's awake? Me too. Hoo, 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 hoo. So then my favorite owl is the barred owl, and that one prefers forests more, but you can hear them out at picnic points. And their call sounds like, So their mnemonic is, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? So anyways, I lead a field trip in the winter where we go out in the middle of the night and look for owls, and people just follow me through the woods in the dark and we find owls every single year, and it's really wonderful. And I also lead some beginning birding field trips. A lot of our field trips are really intense. They're fast-paced, looking at all the warblers that are singing, and this one is just a little bit calmer and chiller for people who are just starting and don't want to be intimidated. So I teach for all ages, and I often go visit, or I used to anyways, retirement homes too, which is a really nice way to connect with the elderly in our community, because they've got keen eyes. They're good at watching nature. So during COVID, we have switched to online programming exclusively, partly because it's safer for us and for the kids, and partly because a lot of our partners, our community centers especially, they are seeing kids in person, but they're really focused on meeting the essential needs of those kids, emotional support, feeding them, helping them do virtual learning during the school year, giving them internet access. And so by staying away from those communities and not traveling between them all each week, I'm keeping them safe too, because I could easily be a vector between all of them. So we have been teaching remotely since March, and we're going to continue to do that through the whole year. And so I get to do all kinds of teaching like this. We've done a virtual summer camp, which was really fun. We just had our camp Zoom party for the first session. It was the end of session party. And we played some games on Zoom and did some nature show and tell. And so now I get to give you some nature show and tell. So I brought some things to show you. And this is basically what I do with kids. I have all kinds of really neat nature things that I get to show them. And usually they get to hold them and touch them and feel them and smell them, not taste them. That's frowned upon. But they get to see all these things. So the first thing I have for you is pretty darn big. Ordinarily, if this were live, I would ask you to guess what it is, try to figure out, what species this came from. But since we're not live, this is a shell of a snapping turtle, and a pretty big one at that. This is the back of the turtle shell. This is where its head would be. This here, I don't know what happened. There's definitely an injury to one of these these are called scutes, the different plates on the turtle shell. So there's an injury here. I'm not sure what happened, but it grew over and healed a bit. So it was an old injury that the turtle managed to live through. These lovely things here, I believe, are bullet holes, because while some people do hunt snapping turtles, and I am on board with hunting. My family hunts deer and pheasant, and it's a really great sustainable way to feed yourself. But then this turtle was left to just rot in a lake all winter. So this was not hunting. This was just aggression towards an animal, which I'm not a huge fan of. But the really neat thing about turtle shells is that their spine and their ribs is fused to the shell. So I know in cartoons a lot you see the turtle shell like coming off of the turtle like it's a sweatshirt or something. But their bone structure is attached to the shell, and that's part of what makes it so strong. So that's a pretty neat thing. And you can actually, there's a lot of I don't know, nerves or blood vessels. I don't know what they are. They're very dried out. But I could, if those weren't there, stick my finger under here. All of these, there's space between the ribs and the spine and the shell. Super cool. So that was thing number one. The next thing, again, usually I have people guess. Any guesses? This is a raccoon pelt. And this is one that was donated to us by the Wisconsin DNR. They sometimes run into trappers who are doing things illegally and they confiscate things. But this is a raccoon pelt. And it's actually, the way they preserved it, it's a little bit like a puppet. So the arms and legs were removed. This is exactly how they would give it to when they would sell the fur, sell the pelt. The tail is beautiful and intact. And a lot of the face is missing, but this is where the ears would be. Anyways, this fur is really neat. And usually when I teach about fur, it's in the winter, we're talking about animal survival. And I like to share that fur is not just, well, like our hair has pretty much the same structure throughout, right? There's only one type of hair in there. Maybe there's some different textures to it, but it's all the same. Animal fur, they have at least 2 layers, and those two are the undercoat and the guard hairs. So these long ones here with all the color on them, those are the guard hairs, and they act a lot like a raincoat, and the water will just bead on it and flow right off of it. And because they all overlap, it makes for a pretty solid protection against rain and snow, as long as the animal isn't like hanging upside down and then the rain is falling this way, then they'll get wet. But underneath that, if you part these hairs, see this gray hair down here? This is the undercoat. And this is like wearing a sweatshirt or a down jacket underneath your raincoat. And this is the stuff that keeps the animal really warm. And it's actually not waterproof in any way. And so the guard hairs really help to keep that dry. And this is also the hair. Animals shed all of their fur, of course, but this is what they shed a lot in the springtime when they're losing their winter coats. And this is what they grow in again grow in thicker in the fall. So they always have some of their undercoat, but it gets a lot thinner in the summer. So this is my raccoon fur. What else do I want to show you right now? I've got a whole lot of stuff. I want to show you my microscope. So I hope this works. I tested it before. I have a few different things in here, but I think I just want to show you this. This is the wing of a monarch butterfly, and I found it like this. So something, probably a bird, had eaten the body of the monarch, and the 4 wings were on the ground. And usually you hear about monarchs tasting pretty badly because of all of the milkweed that they eat. That's why they eat it. That's why they're colored brightly orange, to warn predators that they taste really bad. So I don't know what happened. Maybe something ate it and spat it back out immediately, or maybe it was something that actually likes the taste or can handle that slight toxicity that they have. But this is the way I found it, and I'm going to show you what it looks like up close. All right, so let's get this microscope plugged in, and I'm going to disappear, hopefully. Am I still here? There we go. And let's see. I'm going to try focusing it out far first. Ooh, we're in too close. Sorry if anyone gets motion sick and they're struggling here. So this is an up-close view of a monarch butterfly's wing. And you can see that large black line running across the screen. That is what we call the vein. It's not an actual vein as far as I know, although I'm not an entomologist, which is a bug scientist. I am a bird nerd for sure. I suppose technically I'm a wildlife ecologist. Anyways, so, I laughed and the feather blew away, or not the feather, the butterfly wing. And all those little dots of color are the scales on the butterfly's wing. And let me move it around a little. You can see some of the lighter ones are where the scales have sloughed off. Oh, that patch there is actually a white spot on the butterfly's wing, way out at the end. And those scales, they help make the butterfly wing a bit stronger, and they help it absorb heat from the sun, because remember, butterflies are cold-blooded, meaning they don't produce their own body heat. They have to use their environment to help adjust their temperature. And so all of these scales are pretty important to the butterfly maintaining its correct temperature and having strong wings for flying. And that looks like a tiny little rip in this wing. But remember, it got predated, so its wings are probably going to be a little torn up. Okay, so now I'm going to restart my camera. All right, so I have been using this tool a lot while I'm doing remote teaching, because I think it just makes it a little more interesting, because nobody wants to be stuck looking at a screen all the time. We've been doing a lot of screens lately, right? So thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's see. That is what my job looks like, the fun parts. So that's while I am out teaching people. I spend a lot of time also answering emails and coordinating all of these lessons. So every lesson that I do, we also have to plan with all the teachers to say, hey, what do you want us to do? When should we come? What day, what time? And you would think that that would be a pretty easy thing, but teachers are so very busy. And so they are, and rightfully so, they have a lot going on. But they're not always very responsive. So sometimes it takes 3 or 4 emails to get through all that information. And then you have to actually plan the lessons and come up with it. And it might be easy enough to just spout information at people, but we like to have lessons that are really engaging and get kids to do things and touch things and explore. So most of our lessons involve like a game or an activity, and we try to do that even when we're teaching remotely like this. So there's a lot of planning that goes into each lesson. I also, like I said, these lessons are free, so we do a lot of grant writing and reporting. And grant reporting takes quite a bit of time because you have to kind of keep track of how many kids you're working with and what they did and track their growth in some way that's meaningful. So there's a lot of data collection that goes on behind the scenes. What else? I have some interns and some LTE educators. So I hire them, I train them. And if any of you are interested in that, talk to your crew leaders and connect with me, because we'll probably be looking for an intern sometime this school year once we figure out how we're teaching this school year. And it would be wonderful to work with one of you on that. Okay, so I talked a bit about my job and what that looks like. So now I think I should talk a little bit about my path to that job. And it was not direct at all. I do have some college degrees. I have an undergraduate and a master's degree, but neither of them are in education. I have a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's in wildlife ecology. So for my master's degree, I studied grassland bird nesting behavior. I had a crew of 10 undergrads, and we went out and we looked for nests all day, every day, all summer. And then we put video cameras on them to see what the birds did. It was the most ridiculous, wonderful thing ever. For me, at least, I enjoyed it. But throughout my whole life, while I've been studying wildlife, I've also been teaching, and it's not something I was trained to do. I am just good at it. And there's a lot of things I'm bad at, so I feel completely comfortable bragging a little bit about the fact that I'm pretty good at teaching. So, when I was a kid, I was a lifeguard and I taught swimming lessons, and I was a counselor at a summer camp where we were doing a lot of games and stuff like I do now. As an undergrad and a grad student, I was a teaching assistant, which meant that I helped run labs and I taught small classes and helped grade papers. So throughout my career, I've been doing a lot of teaching on the side and volunteering to teach other events. And so when I applied for this job, actually my current boss, Matt Reeds, he and I were, he was a postdoc while I was in grad school at UW-Madison. And so he had actually seen me doing some of that volunteer teaching and seen me teach some classes while I was a TA too. So part of it is that, I had a good interview and I was really able to explain myself how I would teach and what my approach is to teaching. So, clearly I had thought it through and I knew what I was doing, but also he had seen me in action. So I think that, even if I don't have a degree in education, but I'm doing it and doing it well. So if you're able to, volunteer or find smaller stepping stone jobs that will take you to the place you need to be, you don't necessarily need that degree in order to do the job you want to pursue, especially if you're able to demonstrate to the people who will be hiring you that you have those skills. So if there's an organization you want to work for example, you could volunteer or get an internship with them and show them that you are dependable, that you show up on time, that you know, are good at responding to email and taking criticism and adjusting how you work. And I recognize that volunteering isn't an option that's available to everybody, because I mean, God, you just need a paycheck. But I mean, I have a pretty tight budget and I have student loans that I have to pay off. And I was able to volunteer, you know, a few hours a month. It wasn't much, but that still made a difference in helping me get the job that I have now. So I would say if you can, try to volunteer. And even if you end up hating what you're doing there, you'll know that that's not for you. And that helps narrow down what you want to do. All right, so, oh, on that note though, Madison Audubon does have a lot of volunteer positions, especially after COVID, after we have a path through COVID. So I believe some of our sanctuaries are still allowing volunteers to collect seeds. Maybe you do some seed collection at your current positions with Operation Fresh Start. But they do a lot of seed collecting with volunteers, some work days where you're, you know, clearing parsnip or buckthorn, things like that. And I don't have any volunteer positions right now because we're not working in person with kids. But I might as time goes on. And if you are really interested, please reach out to me because I could create some volunteer work for you to do. Or if we, as the school year progresses, I think we'll be hiring an intern too. So truly, if you're interested, let me know. Okay, so this is the part where I would ask if you have questions, but this is not live, so I can't do that. But if you do have any questions, we can talk about it during Flipgrid, and we'll explain that another time. But you can ask me questions on Flipgrid, or you can send me emails about it, and I'll pass on my email information to you, but it is carolyn.byers@madisonaudubon.org. So that's CAROLYN.BYERS at, you ready? MADISONAUDUBON.org. I think that's it. So thanks for sticking with me through this whole long video. And I'm really excited for our Conservation Academy this summer. We've got a lot of good stuff planned. We're gonna talk to people at MMSD, the sewage treatment plant. We'll talk to urban tree ecologists and a whole bunch of other people. So thank you, everybody. And I'm excited for the summer. Bye.